Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Emily Schneider. She is a visual storytelling teller with an enthusiastic passion for presentation design, and we'll be talking to her about the art of visual storytelling in PowerPoint. Welcome to the show, Emily.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, KJ.
Welcome. You are welcome to the show. You are welcome to India in this online form, Emily. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. As I said, we'll be talking about the art of visual storytelling in PowerPoint. But before we come to the PowerPoint, we want to understand a bit about your journey, your story, so that people exactly know who they are listening to.
Yeah, so like you said, my expertise or my passion is all about using visual storytelling to help presentations come to life. I love empowering and speakers with more confidence when they have the right story. Design is so important in how we interpret and understand and communicate with each other, especially in a business stance. My magical knack has always been to simplify complex information from a young age. I just that is how I saw the world. I needed to simplify. I broke things down in order to understand them, and I realized after a while that that was part of what I did was actually a little bit of a gift and a talent. And so I bring that to life. I work in collaboration with my clients to build their stories. And there is so much power and limitless potential when you can have your story cadence and designed well to drive business success.
Right, Emily. So let's understand the power of PowerPoint in today's time. Now, what is it that people are not able to understand about PowerPoint? Means has it changed, say, before, like it was before, and now how should they actually present things, and where does the visual part come in? I'm sure people are using visuals here, but is there an ideal way to utilize and tell your story through PowerPoint?
There totally is. I think that question actually I have like so many answers. So let's start with PowerPoint as a tool. It is a tool. It is used to help us tell our stories. It's not the space we're supposed to be crafting and building our stories. And so I think a lot of challenges or just evolutions of when we get new technology is we leverage them. Not always, or we try and figure out how we can use them, right? And sometimes we're pushing the limit on what they're actually for. And so when we can actually step back and use storytelling as the key thing, and then the PowerPoint as the tool to support our storytelling, I think that's what one step of getting into the art of visual storytelling. PowerPoint is a tool. They do have amazing, they're upping their AI and the ability to craft, but really it's about making sure your story is honed in and simplifying. There's this amazing fact that our brains retain 65% of information when it's visually designed than when it's just words alone. And PowerPoint, again, as a presentation tool, sometimes gets overloaded with words. We think we need to over communicate. And then this is where the art of visual storytelling really comes into play, is with well strategically designed information, you can actually pull back on copy and words and let your colors, let consistency, let imagery, let data do its job in a more dynamic and impactful way. And it's engaging. This allows speakers to tell their story, but not have their audience read their words behind them. And again, the art of storytelling is creating connections, creating credibility, authenticity, and trust. And so when you can really engage somebody and have them actively listening and have a conversation, you're so much more likely to have the type of conversations at the end or get the questions that are really driving the business forward and not breaking down or being confused along that way. So I think that answers like the first part. Now, how to bring storytelling, or visual storytelling, I should say, into presentations. I actually have a little my resource, or my quick sheet, I call it, on my website. So if people want to go there, I know you'll have some links below, but it's IamEmilySchneider.com, and it's under my blog. And I break it down to 4 tips for PowerPoint design, but what you specifically asked for was just in the visual story portion of it. And so how I look at visual storytelling is from an overall intentionality to what the story is, right? And then we break it down slide by slide. And when you think about it like that, there's just 3 things you have to kind of be mindful of when you design each slide as part of your bigger story. Your slide intention, the way your copy and your words are used, and the way visuals come to play. So slide intention is really simple. It's emphasizing the key details. You're talking about 2, maybe 3 things at the most on a slide. And you're also overall looking at the balance of your content and your visual. You don't want to overdo it, but you need to have space for both of those to live if they live there. If you only need 1, that's great. Again, 3 things are like the most important you want to say. When you think about your text and your content, because I think when we write stories, we always usually start with words. Again, it's using text sparingly. When you think about 2 or 3 points you're trying to say on a slide, that can break down to like 30 words, 6 lines. This isn't an ideal world. I get that like a lot of businesses, that's a really hard ask, but the idea that you can simplify or just keep that again as an intention will help you get rid of fluff words, help you write your bullets so that they're easy to remember. Headlines should be enhanced. They should really, do their job of setting up what this slide or this content is about, but not going into all of your detail. When we think back about presentations we've heard, I know I have clients who have told me that they don't always remember what's said. They don't remember the bullets, right? Because they get really lofty. They remember kind of the bigger pictures. And that is what, when you can enhance your headlines and simplify what you're saying, you're going to allow your audience to digest that information. The other important thing about content and text is to create simplicity with it. When you use a headline, treat it the same way. If you can put it relatively at the top in the same section, bolding, using bullets, and styling things within the platform, it allows you, again, to connect with your audience and your audience to follow along because our brains are connecting those dots. And then this is where I think the elevation and the magic happens is when you tap into that visual component of the design of your presentation. So when you can align colors, not only with your brand, but throughout a presentation. So let's say you have a couple industries that you work with and each industry is represented by a color. Every time you talk about that industry, if you use blue, you should be somehow linking that back to blue. Again, our brains do the work for us to connect the dots, and it allows us to stay engaged and understand the content better. Determining image styles, and again, consistency and simplicity. If you take photos, if you use photography, have it feel like it comes from the same family. It's lit in the same way, or they're all kind of shot in a similar manner. If you use icons, illustrations, again, styling those or picking the great thing now these days is that a lot of our resources have like similar or the families. Use the collections. It helps, again, simplify and create consistency for our brains to digest the information better. And the other image style that we can't forget is data and charts, right? Accessing data, using your colors consistently, but also, leveraging the style and the type of chart used to emphasize or tell that right story. Pie charts don't always do the same thing as a bar chart. So you've got to be, again, intentional. You don't have to know how. There's so many great resources. I Google sometimes too, just on like what's the best way to articulate this data with my clients when I have their conversations, because sometimes it's hard to determine that. So there's definitely resources for it. And then streamlining that information. So when you go to a pie chart, do you need every detail? Do you have to say the percentage and the number and the title, or can you just call out the one number that you need to highlight? Do you have to show what happens in a year, on a year timeline, every single dot, or do you have to date every entry, or can you simplify that, pull back? Less text does so much more. I think less on a page, but more pages is another great way to kind of approach visual design.
Right.
Any other questions? Right. I know I just spit so much information out there, but
no, that was required. You are the master on this, and I need to make it useful for the audience. So it is good that you share those information. Perhaps I would not be able to ask those questions, as your answers will be I have actually told about this PowerPoint presentation. Now, earlier it used to be that people used to think there's so much of text. Now, does it happen that there is lots of visuals? Again, that can create a problem. How do you avoid that? What is there a way to just balance it out as a common person? What should one aim for?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Actually, I've never had that question worded like that, so I love that. Yes, it's emphasizing the key details. It's three things, three main points. That includes images, like that includes words. So when you think about using content and visuals balanced, you want less is more, and you can have a collage of images, but then you're not going to load it with words. If you have a lot of words, there's always I always believe there's ways to simplify words. There's a great exercise I learned when I was really young in my career, which was how do you keep eliminating something, whether it's copy, visuals, or both, until your idea is lost. You've gone one step too far, so you add the last thing back in, right? That's the beauty of undo in our on our platforms. So less is more. You can have a couple images to support your copy, break it up. If it's a different idea, if it's a different part of your story, add a new slide. People don't get tripped up by the number of slides, they get tripped up by the amount of information on a slide. And sometimes we need to change up. Like if you have too much on a slide and you're talking to one slide for a really long time, people are going to get lost or they're not going to listen anymore. So if you can have multiple slides, it helps people stay engaged. They notice something different, and again, they re-engage in that interest.
Right, right, Emily. Now, when you are presenting, and it's a very good presentation with lots of visuals, good text, is there also a problem that sometimes it can be so self-explanatory that there may be no questions from the people who are presenting to? And when you don't have any questions, you have nothing to explain, and you just don't know how your presentation went. And if there are no questions, you do not get the opportunity to explain some of the things. How do you do that? Means if there will be silence after a presentation, no questions, everyone is happy or satisfied with what you show, that is also not a great situation to be in.
Yeah, so I think there's always some kind of delivery tips or things to think about. Again, my focus is on the presentation. I actually have clients who tell me that I've never had anybody said they didn't have any questions, but it was more the type and the way that engagement happened post was so much more elevated, and they were actually talking about the business and curious about what happened, not trying to understand the data or if that makes sense. So they were trying to go deeper in than trying to understand. I think that those are different kinds of questions. So I've only had where clients say that they're more engaged, they have higher level, their business is understood, they're actually having conversations about what they want to be talking about. And again, that's all part of setting up your presentation. In that resource I mentioned earlier on my website, the first step is understanding your audience, because you need to know what they need to know and what you want them to do at the end, and you craft your story to lead them to that. And who they are and their level of detail needed is all, again, balanced on what they need to know and what you need them to do. But the final part, like I said, is about delivery. So there's ways to create audience engagement. There's ways to say, hey, this is something important. Bring things back up, ask people how they felt about it. What are your thoughts on this? I think being a good presenter is about having the confidence to tell your story without over communicating, right? When we get nervous, we over communicate or we overshare, but tell your story in a very effective way, and then have some questions ready to engage them if they're not. What did you think about this? Do you guys have questions on this? I know this was a lot. I think there's always ways you can get that going. And if there's no questions, it's also so what are next steps, right? What do we need to do? You're going to remind them of why they're there, and that usually is a conversation opener.
Right, Emily. Now, what about video? What is the trend nowadays? Are we using videos at all? Not at all, because there can be issues with the video. How does it work?
So I don't use videos very often, to be honest, unless I'm working on a client who has they're doing a big sales event or kind of experience, and they have a production team who will be on site, and that's where videos come in. But for a typical client who's kind of just doing their internal communications, videos aren't always included. Yes, they slow files down. Videos are amazing because it connects that other that sound experience and that motion that a little bit more empathy can be created when we add those to our storytelling. But there's a lot of power in your voice, and people want connection and they want human interaction. So sometimes I think it's just as beneficial, pending what your platform is, pending where you are in presenting, choosing that right medium. But again, my expertise, and I don't have a feeling of like if video is right or not. It's really just about use case and what's going to be best for that.
Right, Emily. Now let's look at it this from a common mistakes point of view. What are some of the common mistakes that people make or can make, and how they can be avoided, so that they hear from you and they don't make those mistakes?
Yeah, it comes down to, and I usually flip it to like, what are the things that they really need to focus on? Simplicity and consistency. So less is more on each slide, less words, less images, give space to breathe, be intentional with how things are placed, and being consistent in how you treat things, the words you say, in terms of language, right? And the way things are styled. And that is going to really help elevate your presentation in just literally consistency and simplicity.
Right, Emily. Now let us understand it from the artificial intelligence point of view. A lot of these can be made in different using different tools and AI. Now, how should we look at artificial intelligence? Is it going to wipe out that sort of a PPT and a new different sort of presentations have come in, or the old style presentation with a bit of original creativity and just with a bit of AI? What is the best way to go about with? Because if you make too much of embellished sort of a presentation, people will think it's all no creativity, it's just made by artificial intelligence. What is the best way to balance a presentation in today's time for maximum impact?
Well, I'm going to be honest, I don't use AI for presentation design because my specialty is in customizing presentations and slides and stories. And I think that's the difference, right? AI is a great tool. It helps us think different. It can open a box to something we didn't know. It can pull in information that we only have one mind. So like, we don't have all these avenues and kind of always adding to our toolkit. So AI can be helpful, but what AI presentations miss is they miss the ability to highlight what is critical or what is the most important thing on that slide, because it's not generated by the story, by the emotional connection. And that's what I do with my specialty is I help understand what their story is, what that key thing for each slide is, and make sure that's what's highlighted and that's what comes to life. And it takes, again, it takes strategy, it takes intentionality. And I don't think AI has the ability to feel that or see that, or unless I don't know how the inputs work enough, right? I think it would take just more work to figure out how to put the right inputs in than it does to actually design it yourself. Again, as a starting point, as an ability to get it there or to simplify it and synergize it for the first round, totally. But then I think we've got to always come in and craft our own, details.
Right. So I understand that PPT in its original form is here to stay, and a lot of creativity can actually, be used in that. Creativity like yours.
I think so. Yeah.
Absolutely. So there's much to learn about all these things, especially visual storytelling in PowerPoint from you. And a lot of people would like to connect with you, know more about this, also maybe want to take your services on this. So what's the best way for them to do so, Emily?
Yes. So you can find me on my website. I am emilyschneider.com, or I'm also super active on LinkedIn. So always reach out there. I'm happy to connect either way.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thanks for having me, KJ. It was a great morning.